Yeah, cool. Okay. All right, so this is the opera jacket from last year's collection. So the opera jacket is where the idea started for doing these opera Sydney Opera House styled welts, essentially welts. Nice try. So basically, like the Sydney Opera House, the way it has like that cave-like shape, or like the orange peel, as people call it sometimes, which you can see here, right? So the way you do this is obviously, basically, you're cutting this thing on a curve, whereas the actual welt here is cut straight. So the straight combined with the curve forces it to lift up, essentially. So that's how you are able to create this. And then it's also just the thing of like one thought leading to the next thought. So opera house. So then what is like a version of opera that we can bring into this jacket? Sock puppets is probably a very obvious solution. So we built in these gloves into this jacket, and built-in gloves into jackets is something that we've done since like 2015. The first ever jacket that we did back then had built-in gloves that you could sort of withdraw from the inside here. So it would just stack up at your wrist, and then you could pull it out and cover your thing. So it's nothing new that we've really done, and I mean, lots of outdoor companies also offer this. But in this option, we decided to go for merino, which is hand knit for the gloves. And then we set up the eyes, which is basically a white button with a black button on top of it, twice. And then the same buttons that are making the eyes is what sort of clips everything into place as well. The upper jacket, also another thing here was the fact that we always try and do some sort of workwear in every collection, regardless of what the collection as a whole is about. Even in this year, 2026's annual collection, there is some workwear stuff in there as well. So this becomes that piece here. And then there's this thought that, for workwear, if we want to change the silhouette and we want to make it a bit slimmer than, let's say, the biker jacket and let's say the Mac coat and all these things, to offer mobility, one thing that we can do is add like stretch, right? So we did that in two different areas. So for example, if Gurkamal, you pull your arms like this, so there's a section that opens in the back here, which is like a rib, right? So it's basically like the entire back is cut into two pieces, and then a rib is attached in the middle, which is what allows it to stretch out a little bit more. It's performing the same function that a pleat would. That's enough. It's performing the same function that a pleat would perform on the back of a shirt, so it's giving extra volume, but in a different way. Another place which is very obvious to add volume, and we talk about a lot, is the elbow, right? So again, there's different ways to do that. You have pleats, you have dots, and then alternatively, in the usual dot that we always place at the front of the elbow to give the more anatomical shape, we've just extended that cut, and then we've put ribbing there as well. So at the moment, it's sitting more sort of open because this is the original sample, and we did change the ribbing for the actual final pieces. Corduroy collar. Actually, we did the corduroy collar here first before we ever did it on the canvas blouson. Yeah, in fact, we actually found the corduroy collar for this and the corduroy blazer, which led to it eventually being applied to the corduroy canvas blouson as well. Yeah, gloves, opera, fucking Sydney Opera House, theater, puppets. Also, like this was an afterthought later. I only realized this yesterday actually, when he was talking about the opera jacket. No, it wasn't him. It was Bhavya. Bhavya visited and was asking about the opera jacket. This is a fuck up on my part to not have thought of this. It would have been a fun idea to try and do like a sad face and a happy face on the two opera flaps, like the whole like theater mask thing. But V2.